Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Unpacking Blackness with Vonda and Tammy. Let me bring Vonda on the stream. There she is.
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
I am so excited to be here again because these conversations are just amazing. And it just goes to prove, right, because of the continuing conversation that happens online in both of our inboxes with
Yeah.
people. Hey, we got to have it. So, hey, I'm good. I'm glad to see you.
And I'm glad to see you. I got my water. You got yours?
I do. And I'm actually doing a combination Pellegrino. I have decided that Pellegrino is my favorite
Yes, it
sparkling
is mine too.
water.
Yeah,
Okay,
same.
so boom, cheers. So I'm having Pellegrino with because I didn't go get my tea this morning. I'm mixing it with a little bit of yerba mate so that I get the sparkly from but the little bit of tea from the yerba mate. So that's what I'm
Okay.
having.
You're being
So
real
yeah,
fancy.
yeah. Yes, I'm
I just
fancy.
got
I'm
regular, I
fancy
got
like
regular H2O today, but
that.
tomorrow I
H2O, you
probably
need that.
tomorrow I'll be a little bit more fancy. Now, what's fascinating, Vonda, is as we were getting ready to start this stream, your profile is gone off LinkedIn.
Yes, ma'am. And it happens all the time, basically every other day. It didn't happen yesterday, but sometimes it happens and I miss it, and somebody will say, oh hey, and I'll be like, oh, but I didn't really post anything that big of a deal yesterday. But today, it's just like, trigger words, right? So you can't use certain words, on the internet without people getting upset. Now people can use any old words to talk about black people, right? You can call black people lazy, you can kill us in the street, you can kill us in our houses, you can kill us in the car, you can kill us anywhere. But you say the word Asian, or you say anything that people don't like, when it comes from the mouth of a black woman, then people have a problem with it. And so what happens is my profile disappears, right? Because people don't like a post, or they don't like a comment or whatever. So they'll report it, and then, LinkedIn will do their thing. And, usually it comes back on within like maybe 10 minutes, sometimes an hour, whatever. um and yeah, so that's that. So it just goes to show, right? Because white people could post the same thing I would say, right? Or an Asian person could post it, but because of anti-blackness, I post something that people don't like, and there we go. And so that's what it is.
Wow. Wow. I mean, my post does the glitching. So sometimes it'll say they can't find my profile or something goes awry, but normally it doesn't. I mean, I don't think mine has ever been offline as long as yours have been offline, but it absolutely have been offline. But I wanted to talk about today because I wrote this post today, and I really mean this. And I think I've said this so many times, but I really need Black content creators and Black people who work in DEI to really, really get this. There are some people who are following us, who are commenting on our posts. And I'm not sure what the motivation is, because a lot of these people, they don't work in the same space as we do. So when I see other practitioners of other races that follow us and work in the same space, I'm always cautious of that too, because I don't know where you work, and I don't know how much of our ideas, our strategies, people are following us for to then go back into their workplace and be the superstar. But it's really some Black woman's idea, some Black woman's strategy about how to do DEI and do it effectively.
Right.
But when people who are following us who are non-Black, they're following us, I'm not sure what the motivation is, because I wrote the post today. There's somebody that follows me, and it is in my comment section regularly. And LinkedIn does what LinkedIn does, right? So it shows you who commented, who did what. And so I saw a comment on another post that was the polar opposite of what I'm doing in my space. And it just made me think, like, what are you following along for?
Mm-hmm.
What are you following along for if
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about anti-racism, if I'm talking about DEI, if I'm talking about equity, if I'm talking about equality, if I'm talking about inclusion, if I'm talking about company culture, if I'm talking about HR and how
Mm-hmm.
demonstratively harmful it can be to people. But then you're commenting on people's posts who are harmful in their language and harmful in their belief. And I'm curious, why do you think these people are following Black content creators if what we believe they don't inherently believe?
Yeah. I think there are probably two different factions. Okay. I think one is the what's the word I want to say? Like the lurker, the
Yeah, yeah.
stalker. They're just curious. They're interested, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
interested, right? Two brilliant, dynamic, beautiful Black women talking Black liberation, talking, equity for Black women, right? Speaking against the status quo. So they're interested. What are they going to say? What's their angle? Blah, blah, blah. So I think that's one camp, right?
Okay.
And I think
Okay.
those people, I think because they don't have enough going on in their own lives and their own focus, right? That when they go to make a comment, they haven't thought through anything. And so they just go, duh. But those people are following because they're just interested. Remember how yesterday I was talking about, when we meet in DC, right, to do our
Yeah.
shoots and everything, people are just gonna be looking at us and asking us because that's how people do Black women. And so on the internet, it's much easier, right, to do it and get away with it because it's not as blatant. So I think that's the one camp. But then I think there's another camp. I think the other camp is the soldiers. I think the other camp is the soldiers of overseers and gatekeepers and gaslighters and CPOs and CDOs and heads of ERGs and blah 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 that are there so that they can report back what the message is and what's going on and say, see, I'm one of the good ones. I'm not like those two, right? And so they are going to be using our materials to come up with, why what we're saying, they don't, why they don't believe it or why, blah, blah. So I think that's what we got. I think we got those two camps. And I think both of them, right? Neither are intellectually capable enough, right, of sparring with us. And so they don't take the requisite time, right, to figure out, like how to do that because they don't really have it. And now with us working together, like literally there is no one, right, that has 50 plus years of experience that is out here saying, listen, the way things have been going are terrible for Black women, which in turn make it terrible for everybody else. But because of anti-Blackness, nobody is talking about it. But now they're way more interested before. They're way more interested because, I think it's getting attention.
Yeah.
And so part of it is how do they latch on to it?
Yeah, I definitely think there is two camps. I think you're right. I think there's the lurkers who are interested in. Okay, so I think there's two groups of people. So I think there's the lurkers, but I think some of those lurkers are hanging around almost to say, convince me why I should care about what you're talking about. And I'm never going to do that for anybody. Either you care or you don't care. And if you come into the space with me, you've come into the space because you have consumed enough of my content. Because I write a lot on LinkedIn and I share a lot of content on LinkedIn, right? That I really should be charging people for. But I share a lot of content. So I don't think you don't know or have a really good idea about where I stand on an issue. Right. And we talked yesterday and I said to you, like, I am all for even Black people, for us having disagreements about how we approach this work, because I think what it does is it makes both of us better because we can then debate with rigor. So then you can challenge my ideas and I can challenge your ideas. And either we will agree that there's merit to my idea and merit to yours, but it's not how I prefer to do the work. Right. So I actually like rigorous debate and I like people to challenge my ideas. But I think there's these lurkers that are hanging around for us to convince them to care about equity. And if you're asking Black people to convince you to care about it, you will never care about it because there's nothing I can say that's ever going to convince you to care about my equity discrimination. I'm never going to say anything. No Black person is ever going to make you say anything to make you care about it. You either have to come into the space because you have acknowledged that what has been happening to Black people, one, in America, but specifically in the workplace, is wholly unfair, and that there needs to be some reckoning for why it is the way it is. Like, there has to be some reckoning from why Black women went from 63 cents on the dollar to 58. And somebody has to say, why is this happening? Like every other group is ahead of Black women in pay. Latino women are ahead of us. Asian women are ahead of us. White women are ahead of us. And not that this is some badge of honor, because this isn't good for anybody. But we used to be, I think Latino woman was behind us, and now they're ahead of us. So nobody is saying what is going on. All of this DEI, all of this diversity, all this equity, all this inclusion, all of these grand gestures that these big companies are making. And we seem to be going backwards in that. So if you come into a space with a Black woman or Black man or anybody that's Black working in this space with the intention of wanting these people to convince you to care, you shouldn't even be in the space with us, because nothing's going to make us, we're not going to be able to say anything to make you care about that. And I get that, because this is a human condition. I say this all the time. Humans don't invest in anything that doesn't matter to them. And that's just a human condition. We can add race, we can add sexuality, we can add all the layers to it, but just on a human level, if I don't care about it, I'm not going to advocate for it. I'm not going to talk about it. It's not going to be something that I lead with. And I think there's a lot of people who come into spaces with us for us to convince them to care about what is happening to us. And, a woman like me, I'm never going to tailor my content to convince you to care about what's happening to me, because I already care, and that's enough.
And I think that's the difference. I think that's the difference, right? Is there's nothing that you and I are doing that's trying to convince anybody of anything. We're trying to bring to light the discussion, right? We're trying to help people see the gap between what they've been doing and talking about, right? Which is diversity, equity, inclusion, which doesn't work because it takes the focus away from the most oppressed, the most marginalized.
Yes.
And then recently to see that the most oppressed and the most marginalized is even now more oppressed and even more marginalized. Last night, I had to stop myself from reading Malcolm X. So I did a poll of I don't know, maybe a couple weeks ago, and I asked people how old were they when they first watched Malcolm X. And I don't remember getting a lot of, or read the book or read anything about him. And I don't remember getting a lot of responses, but I first read Malcolm X's stuff when I was like 9, 10 years old. So in addition to having all of those Black teachers, right, that I had as people that were in front of me showing excellent, right, looking like you, right, teaching me about Angela Davis or Maya Angelou, right, or whatever. And so for me, and this is the thing I think what I want people to understand, especially as they engage in our content going forward, right, is that both of us, even though we have different, experiences growing up as Black women in two different families, we're different ages and all of that, we still approach the thought, right, in such a similar way around, we know we can't convince people to care about Black people being human or Black women making less, but I think there's a fear of people that are out here in the comments, right, in the social media streets, of either being that their voice isn't maybe heard the way it was before, because we have challenged, right, how people have been discussing it in a very clear and open way,
right,
leading all the way back to me getting kicked off LinkedIn every couple of days, every few hours, because I say something that somebody doesn't like. Not like I'm using a profanity, or once again, I'm not showing my genitals, right? But I'm getting kicked off, right? So the anti-Blackness of it all, and it also shows up in those lurkers, right? In those comments, in those, people who think like, oh, if I just keep on following them and keep on watching, one day it's going to click and they're going to convince. We don't care. We don't care if you get convinced, because what we out here is doing what we need to do for ourselves, right? And so as a Black woman, like I tell people all the time, I love Black women enough in my little tiny finger for all the hate the world got. So I'm always going to advocate and fight for Black women, especially the more advanced I get in learning how to use the master's tools against them, right? Then I'm gonna be doing it. And so, but those people, right? They got a lot of issues. They got a lot of issues.
They got a lot to work out. Now, what's funny today? You know how Facebook does this thing where it gives you your memories, like, something that happened. And apparently today in 2020 was when Trump announced that he was going to be taking away, making diversity and inclusion mandatory for government agencies. And I wrote on LinkedIn, and I was like, not LinkedIn, on Facebook, I said that this is going to be a very unpopular opinion, but I agree with him. And I remember like my friends on Facebook was like, did somebody snatch your body? Is this Tammy? Who's writing on Tammy's timeline? Like, what's going on? And I said, the reason why I agreed with him was because, I don't make any of my trainings mandatory, none of them, because I don't believe mandating diversity, equity, inclusion has helped in any way. If you mandate and make people come into a training they don't want to be in, if you can't mandate and make people care about these issues. So I said, I agree with him. I don't think it should be mandated. I think people should decide that they want to learn something else, that they want to understand how diversity and inclusion is impacting their coworkers around them, and then how they can be a part of fixing that solution. And if people don't come into that space with Black people, brown people, gay people, then you just got bodies sitting there with no intentions to change. And so I said, I don't believe that any D&I should be mandated. And a friend of mine commented, and she said, but if we don't mandate it, nothing will change. And here's the problem with that. Because in all the time that it has been mandated, we still managed to go from 63 cents to 58. In all this mandated training and DEI and diversity, we still managed to go from 63 cents to 58. And that's because if you make people do something they don't want to do, to your point, they'll just find a way around the master's game and change it anyway. So I don't want to mandate anybody to care about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't want to convince anybody to care about these things. I want you to come in community with Vonda and I because you want to learn how to be better at this. And I said this yesterday, that coming into spaces with us is not because you want to be great allies to Black people. You're coming into the space with us because you want to learn how to be a better person to yourself, that you want to unburden yourself from thinking about people differently, from being okay with seeing people be treated differently. Like it shouldn't be okay for you to sit in a room and watch a cop put his foot on somebody's neck and the whole world die. And it shouldn't be okay for you to rationalize why that was okay. Or sit in a room with your mom and your dad and your grandma and your uncle and all these people who are rationalizing why that's okay. But I want you to come into community with us, into the space with us, because there's something in you that says, I want to change something in me. And I don't have the tools, and the people around me are like me, so they can't help me unpack this stuff. I need to talk to people who can help me unpack it.
You just said so much. The first thing I got to go back to is the mandate piece. Let's go there first.
Yeah.
Because June 10th, 1963 was the official day that the Pay Equity Act passed, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Pay Equity Act said that women in the same job as men make the same money.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen either. And even that was the 60s. And that meant white women should make the same as white men, right? That's what it meant in 63. Now, back then, if I remember correctly from my stat, white women have always been hovering between 70 cents on the dollar and the 80 cents. So whereas white man been at the dollar, right? The white woman, since they started the stats, and I know in the 90s, they was at 70 and they went up to 80, and then I'm like, they never made it past the 81 cents or whatever. But so the mandate piece, right? So this was a law put in by the United States government that's telling employers, their friends, when you hire women, you got to give them the same as money. It says that. It's the law. But it doesn't happen. Why? Because the people who have the authority, right, to give the equal pay, they choose not to give it.
Right.
And no sitting in, and the fact that it's a law hasn't changed anything.
Right.
And that law is going on 60 years next year. And yeah, so that's that mandate piece itself, right? Because what has that part hasn't done it, because we have never got to the core, because the core is people hate Black people. That's the core. And the core of it more so is an uppity Black person, and definitely a uppity Black bitch like me or you. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Like you have to be listen, in corporate America, I was thinking about this today as we were getting ready to do this show. And I was thinking about the prototype of Black women in corporate America. And I came up with 3. There's 3 prototypes of Black people, but more specifically Black women. And because I can only speak to me, right? I'm a woman, so I'm going to talk about it from a Black woman perspective. But there's a prototype that is acceptable in corporate America when it comes to Black women. So the first one is what I like to call the stern mammy type. And normally it's that Black woman. No, listen to me. Normally it's that Black woman. She normally works in account payable, or she is in one of those roles. And everybody loves her because she takes no mess. She talks to you real hard. And the folks love her because she's going to go and collect the company's money. She ain't going to take no guff. And they love her. Like that prototype of that strong Black woman. Normally she's a heavy set woman, she gonna get with you kind of Black woman. And I think for some white people, that Black woman is so reminiscent of a mammy to them that they feel good with that Black woman, that really strong woman. Then the second is the Black woman who, if you close your eyes, you would think she was white. Like she stays on code. She never gets off code. Her hair is like mine, it's a beautiful wig, it's perfectly coiffed. Her makeup is very toned down. She speaks very like this. And oh my God, she does all of it. And she never comes off code. And then in the middle, it's just your regular Black, your regular Black women. Like we are the ones that fly under the radar, right? We speak when we have to. We smile when we need to, but we just trying to do our work and go home. And that's the 3 prototypes of the Black women that happen in corporate America. Now, here's what gets tricky for Black women. Those Black women who sit in the middle, right? We smile when we need to. We speak when we want to. We're relatively polite. We don't do a whole lot. We get promoted, but we go from pet to threat immediately. See, because they don't really know us, right? So they've only seen us be nice, be polite, be, all these things. And now they've promoted you. And those are the Black women that go from pet to threat, because I seemed really like I would be down. I seemed like I would fit into the Black woman who's already sitting at the top, the one who never comes out of character, who never moves out of her bandwidth, who always keeps her white bosses quite comfortable. But they don't know who they're getting yet with those Black women in the middle. And so I think a lot of those Black women who sit in the middle, like me, I go from pet to threat pretty quickly, because I appear to be like the Black woman who never gets off code. And then when they promote me, they go, oh, she ain't like that Black woman. And those are the Black women that go from pet to threat. And I literally was sitting there thinking, every job I've ever had, these are the prototypes of Black women I see in the workplace. And the Black woman I feel the most sad for is that Black woman who could never get out of character. Like she can't ever She can't ever really let her head down. She can't really talk with other Black women in the workplace. She can't be seen as if she is really connected to her Blackness, because the moment she's seen that way, they move her out. And I just think the stress, like the stress of having to be on all the time at work, I can't even imagine that. I can't even imagine that. So what do you think about my prototypes? Do you think I'm right, wrong, or did I miss a prototype in there?
So, I was thinking that the middle one, you spot on. The only thing I might think is that middle one is kind of divergent from one area. Here, check this out. So,
Okay.
you know how we talked about this yesterday. So, you know how Black people, we like, you might know a Black person in your own family, your blood family,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
lives in the projects, and
yeah,
you know somebody in your blood family that live in a gated community with a
yeah.
$900,000 house. So you know how we in Blackness, people like that, right?
There's a spectrum.
So
Yeah.
right. So my thought is, in the middle archetype, at the two ends, they spot on. In the middle, I think here's where she diverges. I think it depends what she goes home to at the day. At the end of the day, does she go home to a gated community where she still has to play that same role and be on and
Mm.
never retire? Or do she get to flip the wig off, put in some bamboo earrings, at least two pair? You know what I mean? Put some
Yeah, yeah.
Timbs on and be like, oh, these crackers is killing me, y'all. And I don't know what to do. So where is so that's my only thing that I would say is that middle
That middle could go,
woman,
could diverge. Yeah.
because where's she from? And it made me think about, I always got my Philly on, and I think Anthony Hamilton, that's wherever I'm from, right? So it's like, where's she from? So did she grow up like me, and she had tons of Black teachers and tons of Black influence, and had, formerly enslaved people who had, recent relatives that they shared that experience of what
Mm.
their relatives went through? Or did they grow up in a totally whitewashed ass place, like somewhere in the middle of Ohio or Idaho or somewhere where they were the only, and so they had to adopt this archetype as their main protection and their
Mm.
main stress response?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I think about it, and this is one of the reasons that I try to go easy on coons when they come in the inbox, and you'll be very proud of me. I
What
deleted
now?
4 people. I deleted 4 people today instead of responding because they said something stupid. Because I believe that Black people, that we have a lot of trauma that we haven't dealt with. And so I feel like a lot of times when people attack us or go in the comments, it's their trauma coming out. Like the dude was talking about our hair. We know what that was. He just want to be us. He just mad he can't have his hair like that without. I mean, literally, we know that's what it is, because literally, otherwise, why would he be mad? He could just make his hair like this too, right? Like literally,
Just go get some bleach, boo.
go to the store, man. Go to the store. What is it that you see that you don't have, right? And so that's my only thing. But I think you spot on, and I think that when different people approach Black women in the workplace, they have in mind already, right, based on anti-Blackness conditioning, based
Yeah.
on the programs. My favorite quote yet from yesterday is still, listen to words, people. Like understand words. And that's the thing. And I thought about this yesterday so hard, Tammy. People don't know words. They don't understand words. And when words are strung together,
Yeah.
because our education system makes it so that people, you have to be, deeply educated, right, to
Right.
understand things, and or otherwise you be taken advantage of, which happens like constantly to most people, right? And so here we are doing this thing, raising an issue that for 59 years at least, right, since it's been a formalized thing, it hasn't worked for 59 years. I want to know, what job could anybody keep for 59 years and still be messing it up year after year and never making any results, where people would say, oh, I think it's a good idea, keep going.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I've said this on somebody else's post. Somebody was like, I think her name, Vivian. I'm connected with Vivian Aqua. She made a post saying that if you're going to hire people for DEI give them budgets. And I said to her, I said, the reason why they don't give you budget is because they don't really want DEI. So why would I give you a budget to do something I didn't really hire you for? And I think a lot of companies just have DEI because it's almost like McDonald's and the Arches. Like companies have to have DEI in it in order to be recognized or to be seen as a good company. But those arches are just what we recognize from McDonald's, but it doesn't really mean anything, right? Other
It
than
doesn't mean they got real meat in there. It don't mean they
exactly,
got real
it
meat
doesn't
in
mean
there.
anything. It just means when I see that, I know that's McDonald's. So for a lot of companies, when you see DEI, all they're really telling you is we got a few Black folks in here. That's what DEI is now for a lot of companies. It is the same as the McDonald's arch. So when you drive by, you know that there's burgers there. So when you see a company online and it says, we're looking for DEI, what they're telling you is, we got a few Black folks here. That's what DEI has become. It's not anything that people actually want to do, because if they really wanted to do it, and I always say, if companies really wanted to do DEI, they would hire the Black people that offends them the most, the Black people that triggers them, the Black people that makes them uncomfortable, not the people that makes them feel good or says, makes them feel like, oh, this is going to be good, because you don't grow when you are comfortable. Like, you don't learn anything. You don't expand your thinking. You don't expand your idea. We talked yesterday about like me having conversations with my niece. And I'm telling you, I've been in some conversations where I was incredibly uncomfortable. And I was uncomfortable even coming from a household where somebody gay raised me. So what people don't, so when I moved to the United States, I moved in with a cousin of mine. And this is the thing about Black people. I'd never met this cousin before, but she was family. And once you're family, people just take care of you. She's like, well, she can come live with me. Now, I talked about being raised in a very religious household. Like my mom, we were raised Pentecostal. You didn't wear pants. You didn't wear makeup. You didn't wear jewelry. I have a picture of me as a little girl. I'm going to post it one day on LinkedIn. Well, when my mother put us in bathing suits, normally we go to the beach, you have shorts on top of your bathing suits. Girl, we had skirts over our bathing suits, okay? And when we had to go in the water, we couldn't even take the skirts off. So here we are in the ocean in the Bahamas with our skirts floating on top of us, but we couldn't take them skirts off and just wear a bathing suit. I didn't wear a bathing suit without a cover-up until I was 40.
I thought you were going to say 12 or 14 or 16.
40 years old was the first time I walked on a beach in a bathing suit without any kind of covering over my body, either shorts or sarong or something. 40 years old. Like that's how religious I was raised. So my mom allows me to move to the United States at 14. I move on with my cousin. Now, here's the thing, Vonda, when you and I meet, you know how women do. Like, I'll be walking around in my bra and panties in front of you. You do that in front of me, like child naked. Like women don't care about that stuff. No. Okay. And so my cousin had girlfriends. Now, I didn't know at the time they were actual girlfriends. I just thought they were her girlfriends. And so nothing seemed out of the ordinary for me. And my cousin was not out because we have a very religious family. And then she started dating a woman in my 12th year of school. And this was this girl's first lesbian relationship. Well, my cousin was a seasoned lesbian. So when you start messing with the seasoned lesbians, honey, a heartbreak is going to ensue. Okay. So my cousin broke this young lady's heart. And so she basically outed my cousin to me. And I remember when she said it to me, I was still like, what? And she's like, I'm her girlfriend. And I was like, yeah, I know you guys are friends. And she's like, no, slow boat. I'm her girlfriend. And when my mom found out that my cousin was gay, at this point, I'm in my 12th grade year, my cousin had done such an amazing job with me. We had some conversations about, okay, what do we do next? Now, what was interesting is up until that point, being raised by a lesbian woman was no different than being raised by a straight woman. Like nothing was out of the ordinary. Nothing was, you know what I mean? Like nothing. So even growing up with a gay parent, growing up and seeing that, but because of my conditioning and programming around church, I still had some leftover stuff sitting in there. And I had all the evidence to show that gay people weren't no different than anybody else. But that Pentecostal conditioning was just sitting there. And so when I have conversations with my niece, when I tell you, she challenges me. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, but I sit in it. And I sit in it because I want all of it gone from me. Like I want every bit of it just expelled from me. That when I sit in spaces with people who are different than me, I'm not sitting in there trying to pretend to be an ally. I'm sitting in there because I recognize their humanity is no different than mine.
I think that's the difference though in why we can do this work. And like, and you know, it's funny, like I had got a bunch of messages on the weekend. People like, oh, make sure you get rest and this and that. Like, I don't feel tired. Like to me, this work is energizing. These conversations for me are energizing, right? We bond more every time we have one of these conversations, but we get to bring this insight that's been needed like for forever, right? That people aren't getting. I think the thing that you said about the humanity and how you want your niece to tell you everything and
Yeah.
challenge you because it's important to you, because you see you when you look in her face, you
Yes.
see you in her. So it's like you were talking yesterday when you were talking about how when white people or any non-black person does anti-racism work, they're giving that gift to themselves. This the same thing. You're giving a gift to yourself by unlearning all of your homophobia that you got conditioned into. Like it was so interesting about the difference between me and you is like I didn't get it's my family was so weird. No, weird is not a word. I hate that. I don't like that word. My family, I want to say, is interesting. And then we
Very
can kind of
unique.
unique or interesting
Yeah.
because they didn't try to like they weren't like homophobic, because it was tons of gay people like my relatives. Nobody talked about it or made it a big deal. It was like it was just natural. It wasn't a big deal. But my grandfather and people in my family had a lot of very discriminatory views against Asian people because of Vietnam, right? And you remember how all the black vets, I mean, I don't even want to talk about wars because it just makes me so sad to think about how black people have fought and died en masse, right? For no credit, no pay, no
Yeah.
dignity, no anything. So when I think about, like my uncle's generation, my grandparents, my parents' generation, they had some hostilities, right, towards different groups because they saw these other groups getting, coming to America and getting
Ahead.
benefits and things that black people who already been here for centuries,
Couldn't
worked
get.
for centuries for free, and then still been treated like for centuries like crap. And so then me and you bring the conversation, right, to the audience, to a group of people who are like, yeah, like, I need to be in on this conversation. I need to understand it. I need to, unpack it. But they haven't done the requisite work to be able to sit with it because of a whole bunch of things. I think one thing is and I was thinking about this morning, and it took everything I had to keep from getting out of the bed and getting on the computer and because I was thinking about how I love myself, how you love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You love your family. You love your friends. You love people who come into your circle. You love people
Do.
and human beings. And you can do that because you love yourself. Now, conversely, if you had a family history, epigenetically, ancestrally, uh, historically, that was doing all sorts of horrible things, raping and murdering and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
stealing and killing, and then you know about it and you don't like it, but that's in you. You don't feel good about you. You don't like yourself. So that can keep you from advocating for yourself when you at only 70 or 80% on the dollar, right? Even though
Mm-hmm.
you're getting the same work. That could keep you from having a sense of compassion when a man is begging for his mama as he is being choked out for 9.5 minutes. If you had human, that thing in you that makes you want to love the world and give and be, right? Because of what you have. That's why people can't do it. That's why it's nothing that we could do to convince people, right? What we can do is we can show people the gap between what the behaviors and their attitudes and the things they're doing, the impact it has on, women who are working in corporate America, right? Or women entrepreneurs like ourselves, right? Who are, running our own businesses. We can have that compassion. We can have that dialogue. We can sit in uncomfortable conversations around other, groups, because as the Black woman, what Malcolm say, the most disrespected and unprotected, that's us. So it gives us that compassion and that stuff that other people don't have.
Yeah. I've always said, and it's funny because Dr. Claude, Jean Claude, I think you follow him too. He corrected me because I said white people gave up their humanity during slavery. And he was like, no, he goes, you have to understand European history to understand they have been brutal to one another from the beginning. Like the brutality that they have inflicted on everybody else is the same brutality they have always been inflicting on themselves. And I laid in bed all night and I was just like, how do you get people that for centuries through generational epigenetics, because we talk about a little bit about epigenetics and how it doesn't change our DNA, but it leaves markers on it. It leaves markers and it goes from generation to generation to generation. And if your epigenetics and your line of people who just robbed and pillaged and murdered and had no compassion, how is that showing up for you right now? And if you are having a hard time feeling empathy for people, if you have a hard time feeling compassion, if you can only think about yourself, I think it goes beyond this inherent selfishness, but something that's marked on you genetically. It's marked on you that you can't think. And I was like, the one thing with all the brutality, with all the violence, with all the things that have happened to Black people across the globe, Black people are some of the most like the humanity in Black people, the forgiveness in Black people, the ability to invite people in. Like, I'm on TikTok a lot more than you are. And if somebody non-Black just shows some appreciation for Black culture, it's all the Black people in the comment section, you're invited to the cookout, and Black people going, stop it. Like, so old boy can dance on beat and now they're invited to the cookout. But it's that thing in but it's the thing in Black people that will always make room for everybody else in our space. We will always make room for everybody else, even when people don't make room for us.
Why?
Every
Why?
single time.
And so why?
I think listen, I think, without getting too deep, because I don't want LinkedIn to block me here, but I think when you have been treated the worst and you understand the pain of that kind of treatment, I think it's so hard to give that to somebody else. And I think you have so much empathy for people. I think you have so much empathy for people when you do see bad things happening to them, because you know what that feels like. And I think that's why Black people will welcome the immigrant. I think Black people will welcome the white person or the non-white person trying to be better. It's why we bring people in our space. When you've been treated so poorly and you know what that feels like, you don't want that for other people. Whether you think they deserve it or not, you don't want that for other people. And so I think that's why we just invite people in so much. And sometimes to our own detriment, right? Sometimes we get burnt over and over and over again, but it never stops us from being those people. It never stops us from being those people. I used to say to my mom all the time, I'm like, Mommy, you got to stop being so nice. Like, these people are just running over you. And I remember my mother used to say to me, and now that I have children and you have a daughter, my mother used to say to me, I'll never stop being good to people, because if God doesn't pay it back to me, he'll give it to my children. And
Yeah.
it's true. It's true. I think all of my mother's children are blessed beyond measure, and we're blessed because of the life she lived. And so I just think that's the way Black people are. And I am not here to convince anybody who is not Black to care about my issues. I'm here to tell Black people who are not Black, care enough about yourself to give yourself healing that you haven't dealt with. You know, having worked with leaders who are not Black, the leaders I've worked with who are not Black, the amount of familial trauma that these people are walking around with is huge. It is huge. And I think this is why, when we talk about why sometimes a lot of non-Black people don't speak up, because what speaking up for them is not just about losing a job or losing a promotion. It's about facing some family violence, both verbal and physical. And so there's so much trauma within whiteness for white people that they haven't healed yet. Some of them don't even have the bandwidth to sit with us in our trauma.
Yeah. And to me, right, I think that is where, when I started doing a lot of the just, the LinkedIn research gathering, right, asking questions and polls and trying to figure out, especially for non-Black people so when it comes to DEI practitioners and professionals, right, I think, okay, it makes sense why Black people are doing the work. It makes sense because we still trying to get our damn 40 acres and a mule. Now we trying to get 42 damn cents. 42. It's just hurting me. It's way worse than 37. I know it might not seem like a lot, but that it went down to 58, it just did something to me. And to understand that how the projection, right, is that the Black net income wealth is going to be, zero at 25. And so the fact that having those conversations is triggering for people like they triggering people to tell us to shut up. That doesn't make any sense, right? Because when people come on the comments with the distractive stuff, with the, oh, I'm gonna talk about different data, even though that is just basically a gaslighting type of tactic, right? That says shut up, because what we're saying, they don't want to hear it because they know what they're doing.
Right.
They know what we're saying is completely valid, but the bottom line is, we can't convince anybody to care. But what we can do is, in our way, in our voices, is bring the information, bring the data, bring the resources, bring the message, so that you know how the Bible say, let him who have ears, let him hear, right? So the
Right.
people who got ears, they're the ones that are hearing. But right, we are using public airwaves, and so different people are going to be globbing on. But the good thing is, hopefully, that these conversations that we have, when we're doing the Unpacking Anti-Blackness series, which we're going to do part 2 this week, and then we're going to wrap that up next week, and stuff that we do, that it attracts the people who want to do the work, right, who want to be in a space curated, that they have the opportunity, right, to unpack this hard stuff. And whether or not they are unpacking it, from the standpoint of being a person in the dominant power group, being white or being Asian, right, or whether they're in the marginalized group, right, of Black people, and some Latino people. But we got to be real when we have the conversation and talk about who really is marginalized, who really is oppressed, and who isn't. And so I'm not going to let an Asian American male try to tell me, because I'm thinking about the article, right, of the
Oh
that I
man, that
posted
was such a
earlier.
good article.
Right, that article from The Nation, right, and the Asian author who wrote it. I mean, he's like, well, why aren't we working on dismantling white supremacy instead of going after Black people and making our experience worse?
Yeah.
Instead
Yeah.
of doing something.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the thing about that article, when you shared that article, which was fascinating, because when I made the comment on your post, and I said that the model minority has benefited Asians in America because they have settled into it. I had somebody say to me that statement that I made was problematic because I was feeding into a stereotype. And I was just like, no, This is not a stereotype. This is what Asian Americans at the height of when this was happening, when all that Asian hate was happening. I was watching, and I don't even really watch news, but I was watching to see what was going to be, because whenever there's something that happens within the Black community, what do? They go grab Jesse Jackson as if he's the like, can somebody please retire Jesse? Like, they go grab Jesse Jackson, or they grab Al Sharpton, or they go grab somebody Black and decide that that is the person who is going to speak for the Black community. And I'm like, none of these brothers are speaking for me at all. Okay. So when the Asian thing was happening, I was like, okay, well, who is going to speak on behalf of that community? And what the conversation was, there isn't anybody. And I remember, I think it was the Andrew Yang, he was running for president. And he talked about how there wasn't really a voice for the Asian community, because what Asians have done is kind of just quietly stayed behind the scenes, and how they were socialized to kind of not complain, not to make noise. So when I made the comment, I wasn't making the comment from the place of saying, oh, I'm telling you, this is what y'all did. That comment came from listening to all of these Asian Americans, prominent Asian Americans, who came out and was talking about the hate, how the reason why this continues to happen for a lot of Asians, because even when they experience violence, they don't tell anybody. They don't call the cops. They don't tell anybody. And so that's what I was speaking to. So when you shared that article, I was just like, and this is the point I was making. Not that I am saying you are doing this, but this is what your community is saying you have been socialized to do. And when you buy into the model minority trope and it benefits you, why would you stop doing something? Listen, if we are on this live right now, and let's just say this live, we charge people $100 per live or $200 per live, whatever, and people kept showing up and it was benefiting us to do these lives and get paid, why would we not do it? We would do it. And it was kind of the point I was making about, if you're in a group that if something works for you, you're not going to not do it. Now, there's going to be with all groups, because Asian people are not a monolith in the same way that Black people are not a monolith. And in the same way that there are Asian people who have settled into that model minority, there's a lot of radical Asians too, who understand that this ain't working for none of us. And we can't be anti-Black, because at the end, when we get done putting them down and there's nothing left to do, who are they going to turn on next? Where's that dominant group going to turn to? Because if you kill all of us, now you got to have somebody else. If you disenfranchise us, somebody else got to get it, right? And we see this play over and over again. And I talked yesterday about like the Roe v. Wade for women. So it was always Black women for our body autonomy and this stuff. And then it became white women and Asian women and Latin women. And then it was all of us sitting in the same boat. Now, some of us have access to paddles to kind of swim away. And we call those rich people, right? So, if a rich woman wants an abortion, honey, she's having an abortion. I want everybody to know that. If a rich woman wants an abortion, she's having an abortion. But for the rest of us, we're all sitting in the same boat. We're all sitting in the same boat. So instead of us falling into what is going to suit us, we all need to be working towards dismantling white supremacy. White people need to be doing it. Black people need to be doing it. Asian people need to be doing it. Latin people need to be doing it. Men, women, we all need to be working towards dismantling white supremacy, because I've said this, white supremacy is a system. It's not a person. And I need people to understand this. This is a system. It's not one person. If it was one person, we could all just go after that person and it'll be done. But it's a system. And so it benefits none of us. And the way it exploits white people and the way it exploits brown people and Asian people is through capitalism. It exploits all of us that way. But it especially exploits other groups in that way, in the same way, in a different way that it exploits us for being Black.
and it's so many pieces to that, right? But the one thing that like sticks out for me is how people will, like in the Asian community, or in the Hispanic community, they will side with that white power proximity, just to disassociate and make themselves as far away from black as possible. And it's so much, I feel like it's just, there's so many layers to it that people don't want to discuss the why, right?
Yeah.
So like I mean, I saw something today and I was like, I try not to get into it, because I was like, if I let my mind, my mental energy, go towards that, then that won't be my mental energy. I need to put into something else. But there's some new things happening around healthcare. There's some new legislation and all. I'm just like, literally, what we need people to understand, that what we are fighting against, or what the real battle is basically a few people in power that are so greedy that they want to control everything, and they
Yeah.
wield anti-blackness as the weapon to keep the system of white supremacy going. And so people have to decide if they happy with the system. It's kind of like, I'm like, for the black women who came after me talking about, going after black issues. Well, if you happy making 58 cents, that's all. I don't know what to tell you. If you happy with your 58 cents, while white women getting 81 cents and white men getting $1 and Asian women getting 95 cents, then that's fine. We can't convince them of that either, right? But what we
Right.
can do is help people unpack, whether it's their history, their religion, their family structure, their mindsets, and plus all the conditioning that leads us to why we're even having these conversations in the first place.
Yeah. It's so much conditioning. It's so much programming, and it's so much to unpack. And we're at the top of the hour. So we've been here an hour now. We can talk about this all day, but we're going to be back tomorrow
Yeah.
with another discussion. And then we're going to be doing part 2. And we're going to be talking specifically about the programming that we all have gotten as Americans. This is not programming that white people got and everybody else got. We all got this programming around anti-blackness, and to recognize your programming and then what to do to start to unpack that and peel those layers back. And
Yeah.
it's a lot of work. And what I say to companies when I go in, I was like, if you bring me in for culture and you think all you need me to do is a few trainings, you don't really want to do culture. You want to do a checkoff, because it takes time to rebuild trust that most companies have lost with their employees. It takes time to look at your policies, to look at your procedures and how they are either impacting your employees fairly or unfairly. So it takes time, in the same way that when you start to unpack your anti-blackness, your homophobia, your transphobia, your religion, your religious biases, all of this stuff, when you start to unpack that, it is heavy work. Like I said, me and Vonda, I literally was like shopping and thinking about the archetype of these black women
Mhm,
in the
mhm.
workplace and how we have to show up in the workplace. And so we're all my mind is always thinking about how to get this information out to people in a way that they understand it, and how can we have the conversations with them that helps them unpack it. And so Vonda and I hope that you will join us tomorrow, same time, 5:30 Eastern Standard Time, for another live here on LinkedIn, and then on Saturday at Crowdcast for session 2 of unpacking anti-blackness.
That's it. Yep. And we will see y'all Saturday, unpacking anti-blackness, part 2, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern. There we go.
Good night, everybody.
Bye. Thank y'all.